The Kremlin says it will annex 4 Ukrainian regions on Friday after what Ukraine and the West say were sham referendums. Russia will claim control of Donetsk and Luhansk and parts of Zaporizhzhia and Kherson. The areas are home to up to 4 million people in total and make up around 15% of Ukraine's territory. Ukraine and much of the international community say the votes were illegal and not free or fair, and already say they won't accept any kind of annexation from Russia. And we can go live now to Rosie Burchard, who's joining me from Brussels, where European Union leaders are gathering today. Rosie, what do we expect to hear from them?
Well, this is a surprise to no one here in Brussels. This is seen by many as a page straight out of the Russian playbook. They've seen similar actions over the past years, for example, with the annexation of Crimea. That, however, has not stopped European Union officials from reacting with dismay. European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen says this is nothing more than an attempt to grab land. She says that these referendums are a sham, and the EU has responded by coming forward with new proposals for sanctions to tighten the screws on the Kremlin's ability to finance this war in Ukraine. Now, those sanctions proposals include a ban on EU citizens sitting on governing bodies of any Russian state-owned companies and tightening export bans, particularly on technology exports from the European Union into Russia. And that is an attempt to make sure Russia cannot modernise its military equipment in a bid to, again, try and reduce Russia's capacity on the battlefield. We've also heard from NATO Chief Jens Stoltenberg, who says that NATO is fully behind Ukraine's sovereignty, and he says simply, these lands are Ukraine. But Ollie, there is a sense of déjà vu here. As I mentioned, the EU has seen this before with the annexation of Crimea, and at that time the European Union similarly responded with sanctions. The fact that this is happening again, I suppose, raises some questions about the effectiveness of that response. But the European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen has said she is determined to make Russia pay for this escalation.
And Rosie, what about member states' views on all of this? Not entirely united on the next steps?
I think there's a fair degree of unity when it comes to the view towards these referendums, towards these votes and annexations. They will be universally condemned. Where there is disagreement, Ollie, is when it comes to this particular question of sanctions. Now, we've had so far a fair degree of unity just until now. Over the last few months, the EU has, of course, imposed successive rounds of sanctions on Moscow. They've sanctioned imports of Russian coal, sanctioned imports of Russian oil, and hundreds of Russian officials and business people. But now there is certainly divergence, and that is not least because Europe is embroiled in an energy crisis, and of course households and businesses are really feeling the fallout more and more of that ongoing Russian war in Ukraine. Now, the member state which is most at odds with others, and certainly most publicly at odds, is Hungary. Viktor Orban, the Hungarian Prime Minister, has questioned the whole idea of sanctions, and I should say, Ollie, that sanctions are, within European Union law, required to have unanimous backing from all member states to move forward. And Viktor Orban, that Hungarian Prime Minister, is now threatening to really derail the process moving forward, moving towards these next round of sanctions. And some say that's why what the European Commission has recently put on the table in response to this latest referendums is something which was not expected. So these technology export bans that I mentioned, banning EU citizens from sitting on boards, well, those are not particularly contentious. What would be more contentious is further sanctions on energy imports, for example, touching imports of Russian gas. So far, that has remained untouched because there is simply no agreement among EU member states on how to proceed there. While we have the Baltics, for example, saying they would like a full embargo on all Russian oil and gas, well, that's something that Hungary would be entirely opposed to. And also countries like Germany, which are still reliant in some ways on Russia for their energy imports, would also be pretty reticent about that moving forward. So some debates still to be had here within this European Union.
Thank you, Rosie.